All right, folks, welcome back to the show. You are watching HMW Sports Talk Live, but you're watching a very special broadcast of HMW Sports Talk Live as we put together a 2-hour show for you folks today in order to bring you a draft recap of the Texans 2014 draft where they took DeJavian Clowney with the #1 overall pick back on Thursday night. Seems like a long time ago now, but it was just a couple days ago. And tell you, we were having a lot of fun out at the draft parties, and we have some special stuff for you that we captured on video there of the great one himself, Michael O. Smith, aka the hashtag Manzelic. Classic stuff from Michael O. Smith, who you've seen here on the show. We'll share that with you at some point. I'm joined in the studio today by Jason Braddock from Sports Talk 790 and Roto Experts. Jason sits here to my left. That guy in the middle right there, now that is Jeff Roy. You folks saw Jeff Roy here last week. He is a featured columnist with Bleacher Report. And flanking my far left over there is my Pepe. That's my main man. That's B-Dub from Asian Southwest Media, folks. That's the legend, Barry Warner, joining us in studio. Barry's been doing radio around here as long as...
Since before you were thought of.
Yeah, whatever you've been doing, he was doing radio then. And former NFL scout. Barry, name all the teams you scouted for.
Well, I started with the Buffalo Bills. Then when I left Buffalo, I came down here to work 2 years for the Oilers. Then with the legendary Paul Brown, the first 2 years of the Cincinnati Bengals, with Al Davis, with Papa Bear George Halas, and with Ron Wolf. So
now, Barry, I've been told by some of my elders in the business, one of the people who helped mentor me in some areas of what I do, Ralph Cooper.
Right.
And one thing Ralph always told me about Barry, saying, now Barry cut his teeth on really helping some of the unheralded kids at some of the smaller black schools and things like that get a look. That you would talk up for those kids. And
you talking about Kenny Houston?
Well, that's one kid that you kind of help get out there a little bit. Now, I imagine that serves pretty good on your resume.
Well, what was great about it, there were different times. Those were times when the SWAC schools had unbelievable talent, but because of the civil rights that was going on in the country and the small-mindedness of so many colleges that would not open up their doors to integration, there was a plethora of talent at the black schools. And that was great to be able to go down and see a Lem Barney. I wrote it the first time I saw Lem Barney at Jackson State. I said, barring injury, this could be Hall of Fame. And the words that I used, this guy is so quick on his feet, he would not leave snow prints in a snowstorm.
Wow.
Then I saw Willie Lanier, and I said, it's a black butkus. The only size that will keep him, from being, a top pick is his lack of height. Well, I got laughed at by the good old boys who work for Bud. That I can't say that I'm not going to cast any aspersions, but I think in their closets they had some white sheets hanging. So for a Jew to champion black players, put 2 and 2 together, and you got a pretty good idea what I was called. Now, nobody cares about the pigmentation of anyone's skin.
Can you play?
We're in the 21st century. Can you play? Can you help us win? Can you help us make money? Period. End of discussion.
No doubt about it. What was that huge word you used a minute ago with several syllables? I don't know. Just don't use that on this show again.
Okay.
No sophisticated internet.
Yeah, I about got up and walked out.
All righty, Jason, you can stay. I'll try to bring it.
You know what I mean? What the hell was that?
Plus, wait a second, ladies and gentlemen. Hanky with ink right here. Let's see it.
Come on, Barry. I wore the long sleeves, man. Barry, but like Craig saying, I came up in South Carolina, 48th in education, Barry. We got to keep it down to one syllable.
I
No
understand.
doubt, man. Come on with it. Now, Barry, first segment, you were in the studio getting set up. We got everybody's just kind of general take on the Texans with the quarterback situation. Obviously, big news with DeJavian Clowney being the overall pick. But I didn't ask football guys to come on the show today so we could talk generics. I mean, I want to get down into the not-so-sexy parts of the draft. Well, rarely do you talk about the quarterback position being not a sexy pick, but people talk about value and what's devalued, the running back position being devalued. Two-part question. I want to get your thoughts on what they're doing with quarterback right now. But this second part, you answer this too, and then I want to get the other guys' thought on this too. Might teams start looking at how we draft quarterbacks a little bit differently when you look at the success Seattle had in getting a kid like Russell Wilson where they got him and having some success, even though the numbers, percentages doesn't tell us that that's where you go get them to win. But, you know, Russell Wilson, I know it's been a long time in between him and Tom Brady. But those two things, your thoughts on what the Texans are doing philosophically with quarterback, and are we seeing a change in how we look at the quarterback position and how it's drafted?
Well, I think the change is the fact that so many teams now spread the field as opposed to going back 15 or 20 years. So it becomes, the numbers become skewed. That's number one. Number two, I must pay homage to Jeff by calling Tom Savage a BCS gypsy. He went 1,034 days without playing. I love the pick. I think that could be one of the steals of the draft.
You really
He's going to. Oh, absolutely. He'll be a developmental guy this year.
Does it concern you though that this kid moved around like he did?
Not at all.
Under the circus, because he admits himself that when he first left Rutgers, that he was he was sore about it. He didn't like the way the situation was going.
Kids, we all made mistakes. Lord knows the mistakes I made at that age. We could go on until next year's draft.
Yeah.
But there are a couple of things that I like about the guy. One, Paul Brown used to call it, when guys go from BMOC on Saturday to men on Sundays. George Halas called it the moment of truth. And that is that time when the clock is going off in your head. You're going 1,001, 1,002. Your arm is cocked, and you know that you got 575 to 600 pounds going to bury you. And the only way you know whether you were successful with that pass or not successful was the roar of the crowd.
Right.
And that's the one thing that we never saw with Matt Schaub. Savage will stay in the pocket. He also has enough footwork that he can slide out of the pocket and move. You're talking about Russell Wilson, an extraordinary young man. And before I sat down, Jason and I were talking. If number one, Russell Wilson is 215 pounds. He's a big, stocky athlete. But if he went to Jacksonville, if he went to Miami, you don't hear about Russell Wilson. He happened to go with the team that had a great defense that got him the ball, and he also had a two billy club runner. That's what I call Marshawn Lynch, because you need two billy clubs and real long ones to slow the guy down.
Maybe a taser.
Maybe a taser, too.
Maybe a taser.
But, and I'm not diminishing anything that Russell Wilson did. But we have all these, quote, trends. And at the end of the day, any defense can be stopped. You give defensive coordinators enough time, they will find a way to shut it down.
You mean any offense?
Yeah, any offense with the defense will have that advantage. And you'll start to see now more teams drafting hybrid linebackers that can working as a spy. In other words, if you're playing a conference.
Like Telvin Smith, Jacksonville picked
Exactly.
up.
When you're playing in a conference and you know every year you're going to be going up against a quarterback with mobility, then you can afford to take that guy to be a joker or be a spy.
So, guys, let's go here with this. So what?
Got a very strong arm, by the way.
Oh, well, I know about Savage's arm. So what are the expectations with this? As you know, this is a puzzle that we're witnessing come together slowly, and obviously we don't know all yet because there are going to be some roster additions, some undrafted free agents signed. We'll see, but at this point, is there the expectation for this team this year? Are they? I mean, they don't have the audacity to be trying to put any semblance of a winning playoff winning team together this season.
The naive owner does, okay? Bob,
you believe that?
No, I don't believe it. Are you kidding? You see me drinking any Kool-Aid here in my hands. It's not around a glass or a jug.
You had a styrofoam cup when you walked in the door.
Not at all, my man.
You youngsters drink out that sip cup.
If this team,
I know a sip cup when I see one.
Let me make a very bold statement right here, and I'd love for Jeff to jump in here on this. As bad as he was, if the teacher's pet, Case Keenum, who we all saw after about 4 games, was in way over his head, sat, and if Matt Schaub quarterbacked, we would not be talking about the Texans having the #1 pick. The perfect storm last year with Matt, having his confidence shaken, with Arian getting hurt, it kind of swirled itself down.
Yeah, a
But
lot of things
a lot of things came together.
Wheels to come out
But
of
to
that.
me, with a new coaching staff, don't forget other teams are also getting better. The other teams in the division have gotten stronger. Jacksonville is not going to be the powder puff that they were in the past. Tennessee has gotten stronger. And Indianapolis, anytime you line up Andrew Luck, you know what you're in for. So the Texans, to me, are a 6, maybe a 7-win team.
So let's talk about it in those terms. When we look at what the Texans did today, well, not just today, but I mean over the last 3 days, and I feel real good about the interior of the team in the direction that they're going, offensively and defensively. I had no expectation for them to take, like we said earlier, to take an offensive guard at the number 33 pick. I don't think anyone had the Texans doing that. I didn't hear anyone saying that. But at the same time, when they did it, for 2 reasons for me it was okay. Number one, it made sense. We always talk about it, well, you got to build from the inside out. Well, then that made sense because you really need to get a young, big body guy now with this offensive scheme and with the blocking scheme that's going to be a lot more head-on, more traditional blocking scheme than in space blocking in the zone scheme. So it made sense to me. And then secondly, I just believe it's their job to do their job, and we figure it out later. But I like what I'm seeing. I like the fact that you turn around and you go get Nix after you draft Clowney. I really appreciate that. I thought all along you should build on your strengths. Mm-hmm. And the best player we have that you can build around is J.J. Watt, obviously. So when people say, well, why would you add Clowney to this mix? I'm like, because you already – what did the Lions do? They had Sue. Did that stop them from taking the kid out of Auburn? You know what I mean?
Right.
You build on a strength. You know what I mean? And you need to be really good on that interior because we don't know what Cushing is, at this point. At one time, we lived around J.J. and Brian Cushing and what we thought Brooks Reed was going to be a couple of years ago. What we hope Whitney Merciless will turn out to be. And I'm not done with Whitney yet. I'm pretty close to being done with Brooks Reed on the outside. So I'm okay with it. Where are you guys with it? Do you like the direction of what you saw with the team? We'll start with you, Jeff, on what they did defensively with this draft.
I got to say I'm a little befuddled. Not because Romeo Crennel's the defensive coordinator. I'm not a big film watcher, but I did watch some of his games at Kansas City in 2011 and 2012. He's a real plain vanilla guy. I mean, you're talking about a lot of what everyone else is talking about, a lot of read and react and two-gapping. Cover two, press coverage, and he doesn't really come out of it very much. He likes having the big space eater, road grader, nose tackle. But I get the sense one of the reasons why Nick slipped, because a lot of people had him going in the first round, wasn't just the fact that he's had an ACL problem, and he was kind of hurting during the whole pro day.
So what's the reason?
I think the reason is that whole philosophy of having a two-down nose tackle is falling out of favor. I think that the best evidence for that I saw was the Patriots picking up Dominique Easley. Now, Vince Wilfork is probably on his way out with the Patriots. He signed a 3-year deal, but it actually is a 1-year deal that's mostly incentive laden. So he's probably not going to be with the Patriots next year. So they're going from a guy who weighs 330, 340 to a guy that doesn't even weigh 300 pounds. I think the trend with guys in the middle, particularly on teams that are running 3-4 hybrids, is to not go with the big nose grader.
But let me say this about Nix, and I get your comment. But the thing about Nix is he talks about wanting to be a 3-down guy. He may never be a 3-down guy. He just may never be. But I do like the fact that when he started preparing for the draft. He took some weight off after talking to his agents and after they got their information in from teams and scouts and what they would like to see. He took the initiative to get, and that's all we can go by with these kids is what we see them actually do. He got some of the weight off. I think he dropped, what, 20 pounds? He dropped like 20 pounds. Now, you got to understand what type of an athlete Nix is. Yes, Nix is more traditionally the two-cap type of kid that can maintain that double gap responsibility. Ideally, you hope so. This is what he would be because of his size. But you know, and obviously those guys have to be able to really use their hands very, very well in that two-gap scheme. But the type of athlete he is, if you go watch film on him, the type of athlete he is, he, in short bursts, left to right, he can do some things athletically. He's more athletic than the average 330-pound kid. He's not just a fat boy. He's a fat boy. Mm-hmm. But he does have some ability. And I make that point because you used the word hybrid. And I promise you, unless Bill O'Brien has morphed, unless everybody's wrong about him and he's not what we're told he is, there's no way Romeo Crennel is going to come here and live in a traditional two-gap scheme and waste J.J. Watt, because this is J.J. Watt's defense, before it's Jadeveon Clowney's defense, before it's Louis Nix's defense. This is Watt's defense. You can't waste him in a just a base two-gap 3-4 defensive scheme. You got to use J.J. Watt to play to his strengths. So my point I'm making is Bill O'Brien is the coach of this football team, and I just find it hard to believe that he sat down with Romeo Crennel, and you guys can come in and correct me, disagree if you like, of course, and did not have that conversation and saying, I know we didn't work together before, our times didn't overlap, but I do know what you do, and I like what you can bring to this team, and especially me being a first-time head coach, but here's what I can't have you do. And I have to know that you're willing to kind of follow my overall philosophy of how I want this team. And what he says he's going to do with the offense, he's going to have a game plan per the opponent, per week. Mm-hmm. And I doubt that he's going to allow Romeo Crennel to take personnel and not use them to their strengths. If they got the wrong man if he's going to do that. You know what I mean? Right. You guys go ahead. Yep. Have the floor.
I'd like to jump in, Jeff.
Okay.
With all due respect, when Romeo was at Kansas City, he had 4 guys one year and 5 guys the next year from his defense go to the Pro Bowl. That's number one. You coach to what you have. The one thing, when they were winning Super Bowls in New England, the defensive players' favorite day of the week was Wednesday, because they would come to practice and they would find out what type of a different scheme Rack was going to come up with. There are games where they would go 4 games in a row running a traditional 3-4. They would run then a game with 2 down linemen, 3 linebackers, 6 defensive backs. They would come out with a game sometime with 5 corners. And what they're going to do with Clowney is work him on both sides. They're going to work merciless with both sides. They're going to take Reed and put him inside. And they're going to play a lot of different things. Once they find out what they can, they've broken down film. They got an idea, well, we think this guy is only a right-handed player. We think this guy can do this. Now it's an opportunity of, in July, when they get out and put pads on. But I will guarantee you, we will be sitting there on a Sunday and they'll go, holy cow, I can't believe that they're going to try to line up with 2 defensive linemen. And that's the way that Rack plays. So they're going to use training camp and the exhibition season as a lot of different scenarios to try to mix and match and put people. The key for a Romeo Crennel defense is to be intelligent. So when you come in on Wednesday and they change your assignment, that you're able to pick it up and then go out and execute on Sunday.
Jason, your thoughts on this?
Oh, man, there's so much to chew on. I don't even really know where to start. I love what both these guys have brought. Man, Barry, he talked about his long resume, man. It's humbling to even sit on the couch with you, Barry. Not to kiss your
Your
button.
$20 bill will be ready for you.
I appreciate it.
Leave it on the
He's
dresser.
sitting on some dough over there.
But you hear about him talk about his background and everything like that. They bring up so many points. And what I love about being in this intelligent conversation where we're now talking X's and O's is where we can talk about the versatility. And that's the word that this Texans team on offense and on defense is so key on. And Jimmy Ward's one of the guys who's my highest rated safety in this draft. That's one of the guys I have to think, Craig, if he lasted, if San Francisco didn't take him at 30, he could be that guy that could play in the nickel, be one of those twin mirror safeties, because I don't think this is going to be a true free and strong safety. I think we could see a left and right side where the offense isn't dictating what they're bringing to it. We talked about the two-gap system a little bit. I watched a little bit of film, but I've been so busy since January with all the different prospects, I haven't really been able to get in it. But in the few games I watched with Rack there in Kansas City, you saw Tyson Jackson kind of shade over to a one-gap so he could get penetration. You saw them bring 10-man in the box and have a true center fielder back there, whether it's Kendrick Lewis, who's now with the Texans, and seen him out this week at the minicamp before the draft. Man, ball skills are amazing. Is he a great tackler? Not what I've seen on tape, but his ball skills, if they put him back there on an island to be that true center fielder, I think he's got the range. I was still hoping they'd come out with a younger safety in this draft. Also, they brought over Chris Clemens. That's a guy who will compete in there. Their dime packages, what I sat there, and if you followed me on Twitter at all last year, you probably heard some of my mumbling and complaining about the different dime packages and some of the way they should have mixed up the nickel and corner, the safety and corner situation as far as 4-2 more to a 3-3 system. There's so many different unique things you mentioned. And with Lewis Nix, with everything I studied with him, I hear all this about him being a two-down player. The thing I liked about him, I had him rated as a top 10 prospect in this class based off of the possibility that he could evolve into a three-down nose tackle. And that's such a rare.
Question with him.
Yeah, and that's such a rare thing to do.
Type of tackle.
And if you take, excuse me, 1 second, man. If you take that big nose tackle, you put him up there, you have J.J. Watt at the 5 technique, you draft a guy like Jeffrey Pagan at the 5 technique. When we came live on air, George Yuko out of USC, this is the guy who's got some of the best arm movements that I've seen. He reminded me of Cameron Jordan coming out of Cal, the way he fought inside the trenches. That's another guy. You take some of these athletic 290, 310-pound 5 techniques, let them get in there. Then you bring Clowney off the side of J.J. If it's on a strong side, you're going to have Jadeveon Clowney taking on an NFL tight end. Whether J.J. Watt is getting the penetration or not, you'll have Clowney feed, and then you can shift J.J.
So, Jeff, I have to go back to you, and we only got a couple of minutes. So, does any of this change? Does anything you heard change anything you feel right now? Because your reasoning, I mean, you just got a lot of information to go with that, to go up against that reasoning that you
I saw what Barry saw in the New Orleans game in 2012. They went 2 down linemen, and they had New Orleans on the run in the first half. What they do in the second half, they went right back to the vanilla stuff, and they ended up losing a close game, I think.
And that's not arguable, and I get your point, and that's where the Bill O'Brien thing comes in for me. You know, how much control of his team, you know, what type of coach do we think this guy is?
I know.
Is this a guy that's going to be willing to go over to a guy with the pedigree of Romeo Crennel and say, hey, Romeo, that cost us a ball game. That's not a temperament that I don't want people to have that type of expectation about this team the way they think they can figure us out that easily. Is he the type of guy that, number one, will do it, and does he have enough maturity in his job to know how to do it the right way with a guy like Romeo? So we'll figure that one out. Folks, I have to admit, there's a saying that I'm happier than a really nice, overly friendly guy in the penitentiary right now. I'll just put it that way. I just love talking football on this level. This is the type of show I wanted to give you guys for the draft. This HMW Sports Talk Live. I'll be right back.